Okay, so it seems like we have way more interest in making syrup than we have interest in selling syrup. Nobody loves making maple syrup any more than I do, but I do enjoy selling it.
Every syrup has a regional flavor.
Oh, yeah. Yes. So, a question to get us started on. Any region has kind of a unique flavor characteristic, potentially, from the syrup. Any of us can make pour syrup, and pour syrup's all bad. But when we do everything to make our syrup the best it can be, what you make tastes a bit different than what I make. And who, where can make the best? Well, it's more a matter of what you're used
Wisconsin.
to. More a matter of what you're used to than anything else. We've had, every time we have an IMSI meeting, and you're going to have one coming up here next fall. We have an international maple contest, and no one state always wins it. It's dispersed pretty well around. And so in French, they call it terroir, which means the flavor of the earth. And where our trees grow, the minerals that they absorb out of the ground dictate some of the flavor characteristics of the syrup you make from that area. And that's beyond their control. The control things that we can deal with is the things we do as a maple producer can have a huge influence on making your product as good as it can be. And this gentleman tells me point blank that Wisconsin makes the best syrup in the world. Yeah. And I want every one of us to be able to say that you make the best maple syrup in the world at your sugar house. And only you know if you really do or not. So what are some things that we have control over that dictate the quality of syrup that we might make? Who can list something? What? Sanitation. Tell me about sanitation. What's the best thing we can do for sanitation?
Good sap.
Clean, which means tanks clean, keeping our sap cold. A black pipe on a south slope, probably not the best thing. An open tank out in the sun, probably not the best thing, but worse than that would be a poly tank out in the sun. That works like a mini greenhouse, plus you can't clean them. So sometimes we have to use poly tanks. But a target to set for yourself is convert poly tanks to stainless tanks as you can see fit to afford to do that. And when somebody shows up at your sugar house with plastic totes full of sap and they want to sell you the sap, you might want to think about that a little bit. What was in the totes first, and how clean can you get a tote through a 4-inch opening in the top?
Not that clean.
Not that clean, probably. So that all weighs into it. So cleanliness, and we'll call it cleanliness instead of sanitation. Sanitation kind of implies that we're using something, whether it be a chemical or a UV light or something like that, to kill bacteria and microorganisms. Good. What else?
How quickly you cook it down.
Yes. Thank you. Quickly, as in, tree produced it an hour ago, how quick can we get it into the evaporator? And quickly, how fast can we move it through the evaporator? Now, what really affects how fast it goes through the evaporator? Remember this picture that we drew last session? Well, we did draw. I take all the credit. I should initially at the bottom. That would decrease its value a little further. But what makes the difference in how fast product moves through this pan. How fast the fire is, how hot the fire is, that's one thing. What's the other one?
Concentrate.
Concentration level. Depth in the pans, good. The deeper we run the pans, the slower it's going to go through. But we don't want to run so shallow that we burn things. Don't ever think that a deep pan is safer to operate than a shallow pan. Now, I don't do this currently at Eden, but my way previous evaporator, the one I had from 1990 until about 2011, I could run that so shallow that at the draw, you could only see like a 1/4 inch of syrup coming out over and down the pipe. Now, I drew a steady stream all the time, so it wasn't a huge flow needing to come out. I couldn't operate that way. But the valve could be wide open, and you're regulating the syrup flow out of the pan based on how much heat you're putting into it and how deep you ran it further back. So that's the best. If you can be shallow, and hot, and concentrated high, we can make really nice syrup. Okay, so how do we get there? Don't go shallow too quick. If you're currently running it 2 inches deep, well, right away you can knock that down to 1.25 inches and not notice anything bad happening. But you can't fall asleep at the wheel. You've got to drive this thing, or it'll drive you. So you always monitor what's going on in the middle of the pan, not just what's going on here at the thermometer. So watch that all the time. Remember I said girls could do better than boys? Because girls can think about more than one thing at a time, and it's usually the right thing. So think about what the whole pan is doing, and not just what this thermometer is doing. You ever see your neighbor sit on a stool beside the evaporator and just watch that dial? Kick his butt out in the woods. He doesn't need to be there. You don't need to watch a dial like that. It's not going to jump up and do something instantaneously. One operator, one evaporator, then you know what got done and what didn't get done. You know what's going on, and somebody else didn't mess with something that you didn't know about, and like change a flow level or something. I like one evaporator, one machine, one person, and do it that way. I've spent my whole career trying to figure out how to do a 2-guy job with 1 guy. Tapping. For years, everybody thought it's a 2-guy job. Because with buckets, you need more than 1 guy, right? You got to lug buckets, covers, and spouts. You got to drill the hole, and so it's more than a 1-guy job. With tubing, it can be a 1-guy job. You drill the hole, you just put the spout in it. Okay, so we've got those 3 things. What else? Pretty important to do to make quality. Keeping everything clean. Boiling with a hot fire. Boiling shallow. Filtering. Okay, we think about the 4 items of grading syrup: color, clarity, flavor, and density. So we filter well. And it doesn't matter if you're using cone filters or flat rack filters or filter press. Do it well and follow instructions. Make it work. Okay? Quality product. We could go on about this for a while, but I think those are the 4 main things that we really want to think about. Density is really important. You've got to have that right. If it's too heavy, you're giving away sugar, and you don't want to give anything away. If it's too light, it's going to ferment in the barrels, and we certainly don't want that to happen. So get your densities really exact. Use a temperature compensation chart to be able to check density at something other than 211 degrees. Thermometer together with the hydrometer is the right thing to do. And I trust a hydrometer far better than I do a refractometer. A refractometer measures a drop, hydrometer measures a pint, and so I think that's way better. Okay, moving right along. We've made the best quality in the industry. We all good with that? Kept everything clean. Every time the tank gets empty, it's clean. Everybody is clean. The whole place is clean. We're good. Now, how do we promote that to the public? What's the first thing your public is going to notice when they visit your place? They're going to notice you. You look like somebody that's making a food product that's a gourmet food product that nobody desperately needs, but most everybody would love to have. You fit that image of what they like to see. If you went into a restaurant, wanted to take somebody to dinner and have a really nice meal, what would you want to see in the kitchen? A guy dressed like we're dressed when we boil fat? Maybe not. Should we wear a white lab coat? We probably should. Do I? I probably don't. But that's the kind of level we might want to think about. And did this morning's session about the lawyers in the sugar house thing, did they talk about how we dress and how we appear and how our sugar house appears? Not that much, did they? So how do we appear? Now, we don't have to look like a chemist, but we should look presentable. No barn clothes. We shouldn't smell like a cow when we go to the sugar house. Has anybody ever seen somebody that smelled like a cow when they went to the sugar house? Don't point any fingers, but think about that from the consumer standpoint. Then your facility. What's your facility look like? Does it look neat and tidy and clean? Is the floor been washed in the past 6 years? What's it look like in there? Make it look presentable. That's a big part of the game. You could make the best syrup in the world, but if it comes from the gundiest sugar house, it's going to be perceived as the gundiest syrup in the world. Okay, this morning, Mark Dunning gave us a wonderful presentation about social media marketing. That's an excellent tool that I bet a lot of you know how to use. But when you do that, there's information you want to put in there and information you don't want to put in. Let's talk about some of the information that we wouldn't want to see on a social media post. You ever notice somebody gathering sap from buckets and they like to use plastic pails to gather sap with? Ever notice that maybe some of those pails might have contained something previously that wouldn't be a food grade product? Like all of them? So if you're using a plastic oil bucket that says oil room on the front of it, maybe you'd ought to paint over that or something. Now, of course, you wash it out thoroughly first, but maybe you should paint oil over the oil emblem on the bucket before you use it to gather sap. Tank washing. Wouldn't it be nice to have a picture of you washing sap tanks in your social media post? What are you wearing while you're in that tank? My tanks, you get right in them with a big brush. And nobody makes a brush big enough that I wanted to use, so I use a food-grade push broom as a brush. But that broom doesn't get used for anything else. And so, what do I have on my feet when I wash this tank? I should have boots that do nothing else other than go in that tank. So be careful. What seems okay to us, it may not be okay to the consuming public. Sustainable tapping, what's that mean? The consuming public assumes that we kill our trees to get sap out of them. That's what they assume. We know we'd have been out of business a long, long time ago if that was the case. But we have to show them that we don't kill trees to get sap. Explain to them what the tree life cycle is on a seasonal basis, on an annual basis, on a lifetime basis, and how we fit into that equation. The thinning we do around our trees is beneficial to our trees. Not thinning is damaging for our trees. And here's a big one. The nutritional benefits of consuming maple syrup. Are there any? What do we know about that? Who knows something about a nutritional benefit of maple syrup? Somebody. It's okay.
High in antioxidants.
High in antioxidants. What do antioxidants do for us? Who knows about that? Any nurses, doctors, nutritionalists? Okay, well, antioxidants help keep our body free of basically disease. Let's leave it at that. Even making our bodies more resistant to cancer growth and tumors. What foods are rich in antioxidants? Well, we all know about the broccoli. It's good. Favorite food, right? Broccoli. Bananas, carrots, cabbage, tomato, cantaloupe, blueberries. All of those are rich antioxidant foods. Where does maple rank in that list? It's right in the middle. Nobody would ever assume that from the sweetener, would they? So maple is a very nutritional sweetener and even a nutritional food in regards to antioxidants. So point that out. What else? What else is a nutritional contribution from maple? Minerals? Did you hear about minerals in maple? Other than lead? There was lead in maple back when we gathered sap from buckets and lead soldered evaporators and stuff, but now there isn't. But it's rich in manganese and calcium and many other minerals that are helpful in a diet, so it's a contributing food. It's not just there for fluff, it's really contributing. Finally, all sugars are rated on glycemic index. And the glycemic index is a rating of how easy it is for our bodies to digest and metabolize sugar. Now, the difficult sugars for us to use, that would be a high glycemic number, would be corn syrup and cane sugar. The low glycemic sugars would be honey and maple. And maybe a few others that we won't mention. They're too small of a potential to even think about worrying about. Virtually all vegetables and fruits have natural sugar in them. And those are easy for our bodies to use. But primarily it's corn syrup and cane sugar that are tough on us. And if we are diabetic, it becomes even more difficult. We have to monitor blood sugar continually or on a daily basis. We want to be very careful about the high glycemic sugars. Now, what foods might we buy at a grocery store that might have added sugar in them? It's just about everything. Good. And what kind of sugar do they add? The cheapest that there is. Corn syrup and cane sugar.
Did you know they'll put on the label?
Oh yes, added sugar. And we almost had to put that on maple labels. If it wasn't for the IMSI and our county association, state association, we'd have that right on our labels. But we banded together as a total industry and made sure that didn't happen. So if anybody ever says, doesn't do me any good to be a member of the Wisconsin Maple Producers Association. That's not true. Lots of benefits. That's one of the many. So, if you have a display area at a farmer's market or at your sugar house, I have 3 of the commercial non-maple syrups on my display. And I'll pass one to a visitor. And I said, would you please read the ingredients that are in this product? And first ingredient, high fructose corn syrup. Second ingredient, corn syrup. Third ingredient, water. And then it goes down through. And they're all alarmed. Well, then there's natural and artificial flavors. What would be a definition of a natural maple flavor? Does it got maple in it? Doesn't got maple in it. It's simply something that occurs in nature that somebody thought resembled the flavor of maple. And if you've ever tasted those products, you know that they didn't hit the mark very close. Then, an artificial maple flavor would be created in a chemistry lab by a scientist in that white coat that maybe we should be wearing. And it's made up of some awful stuff. But again, he thought it tasted a little bit like what maple should have tasted like. But he got it wrong again. Nature knows best. And you can't imitate nature sometimes. So, that's a big part of my presentation when I go to sell maple to a potential consumer. And you know what? We printed up cards, they're about yay by yay, that have all this information on them, and give one to every potential customer. And so, big help. Okay, we're going to go through some of our slides now. Oh boy, pure Vermont maple. Did it really say Vermont? I think we just changed that. I meant to put Wisconsin up here.
Yeah, right.
We almost believe you.
Let's move on to the next one. Okay, some ideas. People have to have a package to buy, and they need to be taught how they can use this product. So gift assortments are really helpful. What's the average consumer? The number one thing that your consumer might think maple could be used for? Pancakes. Boy, I hate that. That gets old. How many of these consumers would get up early enough in the morning to cook their family pancakes for breakfast? 0. So try to get that out of their mind. There's way better uses for maple than pancakes. But put together packages of things that go good with maple. Okay? A package might look like this. Make it attractive. Seasonally, different packages go good. At Easter, it might look different than at Valentine's Day. We make little heart-shaped maple candies that go good at Valentine's Day. Maybe not as good at Thanksgiving Day. The moose-shaped ones, those go good anytime. People like to come to Vermont to see a moose. Probably maybe less than 1% of them ever do see a moose when they come to Vermont, but we've got some. Okay? Just a glass container of maple with a nice label on it, in a box with packing material that's environmentally friendly. Not styrofoam peanuts. But this crinkle paper is pretty nice, and people like that. Good. Then some products together. So we've got the pancake mix there, together with a quart of maple syrup, and that makes a nice package. This is something they can give if they're traveling. Maybe they have to leave their dog with a neighbor, and they want to bring something back nice for the neighbor for taking care of the dog. So this can make a nice gift for that neighbor. Okay? Just a nice bottle in a special box. Dress up things, just your normal container with a cookie cutter. maple leaf shaped cookie cutter and put them together as a package. People kind of like that. We do a sampler pack of the 4 different color classes of maple syrup. I try to get away from calling them different grades. Them grades indicates qualities, doesn't it? We can have good quality in any of the color classes or poor quality in any of the color classes. And so we can put that together in a box and sell it that way, so you get to try all of them. Wedding favors. Be careful on wedding favors. Guys, you're not going to do well putting together wedding favors. Ladies, you might do well putting together wedding favors. You know, a female moose with a calf is kind of dangerous and protective. Guess what about a mother and a daughter ready to get married? That's worse than a moose. So you have to be careful. You call it bridezilla. Anyway, but you can still do that. Maple cream, wonderful product, but you got to tell them what it is and how to use it. And my favorite is, you take some of this maple cream and spread it out on an English muffin first thing in the morning, and it sets you right in a good place for all day. They love it. And we sometimes call it spreadable fudge. Then they know. Tell them for sure it doesn't have any dairy product in it. It's just maple cooked and stirred. Yeah, you can pretty easily do glass with your own sugar house name on it. Artisan Printing happens to be from Vermont, but they do that and can do these anywhere. Good. Different sizes. Now, we're going to talk about pricing. When people buy gasoline, is it important that they get the cheapest gasoline that they can get? People will drive 20 miles out of their way to save 2 cents a gallon. Okay? When they buy wine, is it important that they get the cheapest wine available to them? No. Where does maple syrup rank in that hierarchy? Is maple syrup one of the things they want to buy the cheapest that there is? I don't think so. In fact, when it's the cheapest that there is, they think there's got to be something wrong with that. So we don't intend to be the cheapest source of maple syrup for our customers. We make it our goal to be the best quality that they can get. And so, yeah, go back please one shot. The gallon, at my sugar house we sell gallons for $49.99. That's a good buy. We treat our gallon customers pretty well. My neighbor just up the road, within sight of my sugar house, is selling 3 gallons for $100. That's $33 a gallon. We outsell him 100 times over. People don't want the cheapest. They want it to be good. Or they'll buy the non-maple syrups. That's way cheaper than anything that we could make. Gallons we sell for $29.99, quarts are $19.99, and the pints are $11.99. $49.99 is way cheaper than $50. Okay? Think like a consumer for a moment. Some consumers think they're highly educated, but they're really not. Sometimes they're dumber than us. Sometimes we're consumers. Okay. Value-added products, you can see the difference. When we sell a bag, I think that's a 16-ounce bag of maple sugar, that syrup is now worth $90 a gallon. By the time we get down to the little shaker jar, we're at $180 a gallon for the syrup. So value-added products can be very lucrative, but you got to find the market for them. How do you sell maple sugar? People have no idea what maple sugar is. Hardly any of them know what maple syrup is. So tell them how you make maple sugar and what can you use it for. Think of some things. And okay. Barcoding. Sometimes your syrup might go to a store shelf, and maybe barcoding is a key to get it in there. It's not that hard to do. You can get barcoding on your containers if you need to. Nice pictures that show your product portrayed in a nice light, and the ribbon, that's amazing. When you have award-winning maple syrup, that catches some attention. Back home, I come from the little town of Cabot. There's about 1,000 people that live in Cabot. But in our town is a big cheese factory that makes some really nice cheddar cheese. I know I'm in a dairy state here now, but they portray their cheese as the best cheese in the world because they won a contest, maybe just once. Maybe it was 40 years ago. But they don't let go of that. #1 best cheese in the world. It says on all the tractor trailers. And so ride that wave. Don't be embarrassed to put a ribbon out that shows that your product is quality, and not just from your say-so, but from the judges' say-so. In our display room, we have over 600 ribbons that we've won in the past 30 years, pinned up in the ceiling, and people look at those and just about tip over backwards. Wow, that's pretty nice. Okay. Now you can't see this one very good, but glass makes a nice container. Glass isn't the container to promote for everyday use for your normal local customers, but for visitors from out of state, oh, they love glass. Candies. This looks like a nice, attractive candy package, doesn't it? A few thrown in a bag, maybe not so good. And if you know about maple candies, dark candies don't sell good. Light candies sell good. Dark sugar sells good. Light sugar may not. So we use a dark syrup to make sugar, or light syrup to make candy, and select our syrup based on what we're going to do with it. Okay? That's our card that tells all about the nutritional benefits of maple. And this is something we had printed up. It has a barcode thing on it so that they can find our sugar house from this card. If they pick it up somewhere else or forget where it came from, they can go direct to us. Different color classes of maple syrup. Okay? And happy faces. If you can get pictures of happy faces in your sugar house. Ooh, what about that little girl with the sugar on snow? Is that a happy face? Absolutely. Good. Dress it up. Make it look good. Okay? That make it?
That's it.
Okay. Let me check, see what time we got. I wish there was a clock in here. This is very handy.
About 10 after.
7.
Okay. We're supposed to be done. I don't want you to be late after school. Okay, we've got another 10 minutes. This morning, the presentation on social media. Did everybody here attend that? Mark Dunning did an amazing job with that. He makes it look easy, doesn't he? It's not easy for me, but my daughter, it is easy for her. And she does a great job getting her stuff on social media. But find somebody that can help you with that if you don't know how to do it yourself. And get some pictures on. And seasonal shots. Like right now we're tapping trees. You think your customers might be interested to see tapping trees? Make sure you've got the right guy in the picture. Okay? What do I mean by the right guy? Somebody that's dressed okay. They don't have to be fancy in a tuxedo or anything, but they got to look sort of presentable. And make sure it's a picture that would attract the customer, not scare one away. Okay, so you wouldn't want a picture of me tapping the tree. Somebody looks good. The snow, how that affects things. Get that on your social media. And it has nothing really to do with selling syrup, but it's all part of, people want to know the mystique of maple. What's interesting about it. If they can go to work on Monday and tell their buddies at work, gee, I went to so-and-so sugar house, and they explained all about making maple syrup. Did you know that there's 4 different colored classes of maple syrup? And the darkest one is really good for cooking. Any of them are good for table use. But I like this amber rich one the best. It's nice to have people talk about your place like that, isn't it? And that word can spread pretty fast. Now imagine the opposite. Boy, we had a pretty bad day on Saturday. We went to so-and-so sugar house and had the mud floor and there was mouse droppings all over the counters and oh, it looked horrible and the guy was dressed in rags. Yeah, I'm never going there again. That'll travel around pretty fast too, won't it? So be sure the image that people see of your place is a good one and it'll keep them coming back. Is there anybody here that would never want to sell maple products at $180 a gallon like we saw up here? Wouldn't that be kind of nice? It takes people to buy it. You got to get them in and hook them. And then they tell the story to their friends and it hooks them and it becomes contagious. And one thing you've got out here that we don't have in Vermont is a lot of people. And you get into your urban areas and it's a lot of people. When I flew out here, the guy asked me which airport I flew out of in Vermont. And I said, we only got one. And he looks it up on his phone and he says, yeah, there's not that many planes there either. How do you know that? Right. Vermont's a tiny population state. We've got way more maple trees than we get people. Other states have a lot of people, and you can market maple syrup pretty effectively. I've got a lot of competition. Good. So other kinds of market would be wholesale. We've pretty much just focused on retail, but wholesale would be where you sell to a restaurant or a store or, for us, a food distributor that supplies a lot of restaurants. Now, historically, everybody's thought to supply maple syrup to a restaurant, you want to put it in a 5-gallon bucket that weighs 63 pounds. And you want some restaurant waitress to have to pick that thing up and pour it into a full glass pitcher. That isn't going to go well, is it? And it's going to take 3 weeks to get that 5-gallon jug all gone. So they've got to put that in a walk-in cooler, and it's a pain. So what we do to solve that problem, our wholesale gets packaged in gallon jugs. And if you study it out, if you don't get the 5-gallon bucket back, it's actually cheaper for us to put it in gallon jugs than it is 5-gallon bucket. And our end users love it. Anybody can pour out of a gallon jug. And chances are good they're going to use that whole gallon in a day, so it doesn't ever have to go to the cooler and absorb space there. Yes?
When you talk like food service and wholesale versus selling in bulk to another
Yes.
producer,
Yes.
what do you think is the markup or the price differential there?
That is a great question. And here's what I do. I figure out what can I get for that same syrup in a barrel. With no mess, no bother. It goes in a barrel, we wheel it out the door into the truck and away it goes. Then I calculate in as best I can what it's going to cost per container and any labor that we need to provide to get it into that container. And then I add the profit margin in. So for a target number, I would target $40 a gallon for wholesale to go to a commercial kitchen or a food distributor. And that would be a safe number to use. Now the price of maple syrup is on its way up right now. Be ready. If you need to adjust pricing, do that before the season starts. And what do we think syrup's going to sell for by the pound this year? Who would venture a guess? The fellow that can really tell us just left. He's the one that buys it from us, right? Don't be surprised to think that non-organic conventional syrup could sell for $2.75 a pound in a barrel this year. And that makes its value at a little over $30 a gallon based on barrel price. So make sure that you're marking it up enough to take care of the risk, the labor, the container of putting it out there in a wholesale market. So I'd say $40 a gallon would be the absolute minimum to think about charging for that. What's risk? Why do I say risk? What's the risk of selling a gallon to a restaurant? Risk. What if you did something wrong?
Well, if they even leave it on the counter,
Yeah.
it gets mold,
Yeah, good.
because they
Good.
don't know enough to refrigerate it.
Yeah. And whose fault was that? It's always yours. Okay, so that's the risk. If they're happy and it goes well, you minimize that risk. But there's always a potential risk that when they dump out that last bit, there's an ant in the bottom of that jug, and you didn't catch it. Now you've got a lawsuit because of an ant. So always accept that risk and price a little accordingly, so that you kind of cover yourself in the event that something goes wrong. How do you get it from your sugar house to the restaurant? You deliver it? Do they come and get it? Probably not. So figure that in as well. Good question. Any others?
Do you have any difference in breaks between so-called distributors versus a direct wholesaler?
Yes. You have to be careful about that. If you're selling to a food distributor, you got to protect him. You can't sell to the same restaurant that would normally buy from him at a cheaper price than you're selling to the distributor, or even the same price, because that'll undercut and you'll lose that distributor. He'll say, why am I bothering with this? He's going to sell direct. You're not going to do it. So
Now, how can you control that then?
you charge more to the restaurant than you would to the distributor. The distributor's got to get the best price. And how that happens for us, when we sell to a food distributor, we package 144 gallons on a pallet. 4 gallons to a box. It gets shrink wrapped and banded to the pallet, and it goes out of our place on a forklift into the back of the truck, and then it goes away. So I've got only the expense of the truck. I've got no delivery expense to get it to an end user, and so I can get it to that wholesaler, the distributor, cheaper than I can to an end user. And so you just adjust your price accordingly, whatever you think that service is worth.
Do you have any volume that he has to buy before?
Sorry, absolutely. So a distributor is buying by the pallet. A restaurant might buy by the case. And hopefully you can talk them into buying several cases at a time so the delivery becomes a little easier and cheaper. But yeah, 144 gallons versus 20 gallons.
So you're not going to sell a distributor the same quantity as you're going to sell a restaurant?
Probably not. Yeah. Maybe you can. Maybe the restaurant's using enough. And if the restaurant is using enough, then you might treat him just like a distributor. Whoever uses the most volume counts. And that's any other questions? Yes, sir.
What percentage of the syrup that you make do you actually sell retail,
Yeah.
and then versus what you put on a semi and send it, and where does that syrup go to?
That's a great question. So I've always said about a third of what I make goes out to a retail customer. That would be an end user in a retail container. And a third goes to a food distributor, and a third goes to barrels. Now, to be honest with you, we've been mixed up with COVID over the past few years, so that thirds may be skewed a little bit, but that's kind of a target. We try to maximize what goes to the retail customers. That's their best bang for the buck. Then, after that, you maximize what goes to the food distributors, and the final third, whatever's left goes to the bulk buyers. Now, we're a little unique in that. Any other sugar house in Vermont, as big as we are, sells 100% to a packager. They don't attempt to do any retail or wholesale. It's unusual, put it that way. Good, anything else? Yes, sir.
Nothing to do with what we're talking about. But how come in Vermont, you don't need a food processor like we do?
Let's not go there. I think I won't answer that question on the grounds that it might cause me trouble.
It should be the opposite way. Wisconsin should look at what Vermont has done.
Absolutely.
You know, and out east, because it's ridiculous here.
It is.
And getting worse.
And a lot of other states in the same boat, New York and so on. It's a similar situation, and it's sad. Key thing about maple, it's a very food-safe product, but it's being treated the same as milk and meat that are not food-safe products. And they kind of feel like you got to treat everybody the same because they just don't know about a product. Ever heard of people dying eating maple syrup? I haven't. But yes, canned stuff that went bad, people can die from that. Meat that's stored and processed improperly, people can die from that. So they treat maple the same way here, and it's pretty sad. But you do what you gotta do. Well, wonderful, folks. It's been really nice for me to spend the day with you. Appreciate your questions and comments, and have a great maple season. And if we could, let us be thoughtful for just a moment about anybody that we know about in our maple world that might not be with us this season. For whatever reason, we've lost some loved ones in the industry, some due to COVID and some to just natural causes. So let's be thoughtful about them a little bit. Thanks.
Thank you for coming.
Okay.